All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last in our cultural conversation series. These have been a series of lectures and presentations with community members and reflections on our current exhibition, Luces y Sombras, Mexican Photography from the Bank of America collection. The program is presented in partnership with Beatriz Andrekovich from CABETCAL. I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about that. But I'm David Madison. I'm the Associate Curator of Education and Outreach at OMA. I do have the pleasure of introducing Beatrice, who is going to be our moderator this evening, and then she is going to introduce our presenter, David. We are just so grateful to have you both with us today. I just want to read a real quick bio for you, Beatrice. You have so many accomplishments that we'll share in a fuller bio, a PDF that I'll share in the chat in just a few minutes. But born and raised in Mexico City, Beatrice has spent her life studying and championing the cultural traditions of the Americas. As a Central Floridian, her resume includes work on behalf of a long litany of organizations and events that strengthen the ties between the United States and the Spanish-speaking world. The list of undertakings that have benefited from her expertise include Casa de Mexico, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Fort Myers, Orange County's Fusion Fest, which I'm very excited to hear. I want to hear more about how that went recently, and Castleberry's Latin Fest. Her nonprofit provides public relations and art and cultural support for larger nonprofit organizations in the Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. So thank you again for tuning in to our presentation today. Beatrice, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Our mission is to share the culture of different countries because we believe that by knowing each other, we have more respect for each other as we know each other better and we integrate better in this community that we all form part of. We believe also in giving our best because when we give our best to the community becomes best for all of us and for our children. We are the country next door in Mexico. And I learned so much about the United States while I was growing up in Mexico that now that I live in the United States, I want to share Mexico with you. And today we're going to learn more about some education in pre-Hispanic Mexico before the Spanish came and some of its music, the instruments they had before the Spanish came. With us is today David Peñaflor, who is also from Mexico. He is a Mexican songwriter and folklorist who was well known for his music, which was inspired by pre-Columbian culture. Within his presentations, he creates sound atmospheres that evoke the great Aztec and Mayan civilizations. His work is informed by ethnomusicological, that's a hard word, but it's ethnomusicological research and travels throughout Mexico, during which he has interacted with many different ethnic groups because we have many different groups in Mexico and has acquired a collection of culturally specific musical instruments that you are going to see some of them today. David Peñaflor is a former cast member of EPCOT's Mexican Pavilion, which is wonderful, which is food too. And in 2017, David received the Florida Fall Like Award for his research and his performances. Thank you, David Peñaflor. We congratulate you for all everything that you do, for all your research and performances as well. And we thank you for having the time to share everything that you know, or almost everything, because it's impossible in 1 hour with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatriz, and thank you for the Orlando Museum of Art. I am very proud to stay here. And I try to explain some things about to the Mexico Pre-Columbian. It's an overview. It's an overview. Overview is very, very quickly. And I'm making one PowerPoint. I try to put in the screen, okay?
Very well.
And I speak in Spanish, and you please make the traduction. Click here. Okay, you can see? Can I hear you?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Panorama de la educación mexica. Aztec or Mexica is the same. It's the same. In the beginning to the times, the Mexicas, the name is Aztecs. Now I speak in Spanish. La leyenda dice que partieron. Ahí traduce. Beatriz.
Sí, lo vemos. Okay. Aztecs and Mexicas, as David said, is the same. They were called Aztecs as they traveled to what is now called Mexico. When they established themselves in the central part of the country, they called themselves Mexicas. And now we're going to view the legend of how they got there.
Y la leyenda dice que tenían que encontrar un águila sobre un nopal y con una serpiente, devorando a una serpiente.
The Aztecs came, and we believe they came from the northern part of the country, from a place called Aztlan. They traveled south, as I said, to the central part of which is now Mexico City, looking for an eagle that was eating a serpent on a nopal. That was what the legend said, and that's what they were looking for and found.
Y ese es el escudo que tenemos en nuestra bandera nacional.
And that became so important to where they established themselves in a lake that had that eagle eating the serpent and nopal, that is part of our flag today and our seal.
Ellos construyeron una gran ciudad sobre los lagos, porque era una gran espacio con varios lagos, y sobre ellos construyeron la ciudad de Mexico Tenochtitlan.
Mexico as a country is very diverse. The northern part has a desert, the central part has mountains and lakes, and the southern part is the tropical forest. So in the central part, which is what we're looking at now, the Aztecs then built many canals and a city on top of a lake, as you can see on the picture. In fact, when the Spanish came, they were amazed at this city, like a Venice, with many canals and every building, pyramid built on water.
Los españoles se maravillaron y le nombraron la Nueva Venecia.
Yes, I said the Spanish were amazed at this town city that was called Tenochtitlan, with many markets, outside markets called tianguis, and they call it the New Venice.
Ahí está el mercado, precisamente en un mural que hizo el pintor Diego Rivera.
Diego Rivera was one of the artists, a Mexican painter, who painted what a market looked like, with thousands of people trading, many different groups of indigenous people from all around what we now call Mexico. Back then, it was many different groups from all over the American continent trading in this market, thousands and thousands of people trading their goods.
Tenían una organización sacerdotal, o sea que el gobernante era también el líder religioso.
Their society was made of many different levels. A very important part of society was the priests, and the king. The king or emperor was part of this and was the leader of the religious group.
El pueblo tenía muchas actividades y desde muy pequeños los niños aprendían de sus padres los oficios.
One thing that we have to say, that even within all the levels, everybody had the right to receive education, not only those who went into the church. Well, we call it the church today, but into the religious aspect. In every level of society, education was very important and was given from the grandparents to the parents, from the parents to the children.
El respeto a los viejos era muy importante. Aquí los vemos a los viejos que eran respetados, y ellos hacían el consejo de ancianos.
As I mentioned, education came from grandparents, from the elders, and therefore the elders receive high respect. In fact, they have a council of the elders, which is what you can see in the pictures here.
Tenían su escuela, una de ellas se llamaba Calmecac, que quiere decir casa de la dinastía, y en esta escuela aprendían oficios y aprendían los secretos de la astronomía, aprendían todo lo que es ciencia.
Besides being educated at home, children could also attend schools. Schools were called calmecaca. And when they went to school, they could learn about science, about astronomy. You may recall that Mayas were very ahead in astronomy. So there was an education system for all children. Very, very organized.
Y la música se transmitía en una casa que se llamaba Cuicacali, que quiere decir la casa del canto.
Just like they had a house, the Calmecac, for the science, they also had a house for music to educate the children in music, which was the Cuicacali, which will translate today as the house of singing. And you see in the picture here how they're singing. And so you know all those little drawings that are coming out of people is a language. That's how they transmitted what they wanted to say through those, let's call them hieroglyphics, little drawings.
Aquí vemos varias figuras donde aparecen los instrumentos que dibujaron, los instrumentos musicales que más tarde vamos a tocar y vamos a explicar su nombre y su origen.
This is a very important slide because you can see here the instruments that they had before the Spanish came. If you take a closer look, you will see that most instruments do not include strings. Those were brought by the Spanish. So please take a look at the instruments that you see here that David is going to explain and also show to you and play for you. So music was very important. The arts were a very important part of the society.
Porque la música estaba ligada a la poesía. Y además
Hello?
sí, se perdió la voz.
But I'm back. Okay. You were saying that music was highly related to poems and literature. So you will hear many times poems were said as music was playing. And the dances too. So all the arts related to each other. And again, the arts and science were and math were a very important part of society and education that was passed from generation to generation, especially in an oral form.
Tenían un dios de la música, un dios de la danza, y aquí vemos el símbolo de lo que se llama Inxóchitl Incuicatl, flor y canto, que era la manera de enunciar a la poesía y a la música.
They also, in their different gods, they had a god for music, a god for poems, and it's very important to notice that nature was also related to the arts. You will notice in all indigenous groups, the high respect that they had for nature. And the words Xochitl Incuicali that you see on the screen mean exactly that, the relationship between flowers in nature and music. And you know that if you play music to a flower, it will grow better. So there is a high relationship among all beings and music.
Yes, sí. Y estos instrumentos, todavía hay muchos de ellos que se siguen tocando. Aquí vemos a un campesino tocando el teponaztle en Tepoztlán, Morelos.
Many of these instruments have survived, and in Mexico, we make a high effort in keeping our traditions alive from many different groups, indigenous groups, or if they came from Africa or Europe, we are all part of Mexico. In this case, we can see this instrument that is in, ¿dijiste Texcoco, David?
No, Tepoztlán, Morelos, allá en nuestro pueblo.
In Tepoztlán. In the state of Morelos, because Mexico is divided in 32 states and every state is very different from each other, which is art, which is ceramics, is food. And our dear David Peñaflor is from the state of Morelos, which we call the state of eternal spring, because the weather is beautiful, it's nature, flowers, perfect place to be.
Así es. La gran aportación de los mexicas fue el cultivo de las chinampas, que son unas plataformas donde podían tener cultivo todo el año y se sigue haciendo, te lo voy a abreviar. Ellos, como vivían en lagos, crearon las chinampas, que son parcelas flotantes.
You recall that we said that they built everything on a lake? Well, they also built gardens that are called chinampas, gardens on a lake. Europeans were so amazed when they saw this. Fruits, vegetables floating on the lake, and then they will go from one to the other in canoes like Venice. And therefore, indigenous people had all kinds of fruit and vegetables and ate very healthy. In fact, they also bathed every day, very organized and very clean. Very healthy.
Desarrollaron las artes como la pintura.
They developed the arts, and now we're looking at painting as well.
La observación astronómica.
Remember, we said they were divided by houses. So now we're going back to the house of science, where astronomy was very important in education. And we know that made amazing calendars. So astronomy, which is what we're looking at on the slide, was very important. And this was very important also for the fields. They knew exactly when it was going to rain.
De chicas.
In cycles. ¿Este qué calendario es?
Este es el calendario de los mayas.
We just saw the calendar of the Mayas, very precise. Mayas were amazing and excelled at science and math.
Y esta es...
And so, you know, Mayas were mainly in the peninsula of Yucatán going into Guatemala.
That's una cosmovisión. Los mexicas en el centro.
The way the Aztecs, Mexicas look at the cosmos is because they were so strong, they put themselves in the center of the universe. In fact, you may see many times, if you look at the Virgin of Guadalupe, you will see that there's a moon that is under the Virgin. That means the center of the universe in the moon. The moon was supposed to be the center of the universe. So being such a strong culture, that's how they view themselves. David? David, are you there? David, ¿estás ahí? I don't know what happened. I apologize. I don't know if I'm still on the Zoom or not. Oh, it seems that we lost David Peñaflor for a second. Let's allow for him to get back into the Zoom.
Yes, ya regresó.
Very well. David, ¿estás de regreso? Are you back? Yes, I'm here.
Sí.
Okay, we can hear you. Te escuchamos.
Entonces, esta es la, sí, la reconstrucción de los instrumentos usados como material de educación musical.
Cierra la ventanita del... Ya, te veo. Perfecto. Okay. And now, David is going to show us those instruments that he was talking about. This is a recreation because we don't know exactly, since we're not there, how everything was exactly used. So this is the best recreation based on research that we can show you. And David has also looked for these instruments everywhere to be able to share them with you. Adelante, David. If you can move your camera so we can see the instruments. Si puedes mover tu cámara a ver los instrumentos, David.
Adelante. Entonces, cierro la ventana del
Ya la cerraste, yo te veo a ti. Ahora mueve la cámara a que se vean los instrumentos.
Ya. Sí, están aquí atrás de mí.
Perfecto.
A ver, vamos a ver. Ahí me puedes ver, Beatriz.
Sí, I can see you
¿Pueden ver
perfectly.
los instrumentos?
David and the instruments.
Bueno, voy a empezar a tocarlos y después vamos a explicarlos, ¿de acuerdo?
Okay, so David is going to play the instruments before, and then he's going to explain them. We have some of them like wind instruments, like the flutes that he's going to play, and others. But notice, no strings. Those were brought by the Spanish. David? David?
Retomo, Beatriz.
Muy bien. Gracias, David. ¿Nos vas a explicar los instrumentos? You're going to explain to us the different wind instruments that you showed? David?
Bueno, está fallando el internet.
Ok, pero puedes explicar los instrumentos que tocaste que pudimos escuchar. Si quieres
Bueno, me
explicar.
quedé, sí. Voy a seguir la secuencia y espero no se... ¿Tú me estás viendo bien?
Yo te veo bien. Yes, we
¿Los
can see
instrumentos también?
David very well. And I asked him to explain to us the instruments,
Perfecto.
which if you notice, many instruments sound like animals in nature. Like you could almost hear the birds.
Muy bien.
And you could see the snake.
Nitra papal notizen tliniya ni yola ya. Nitra papal notizen tliniya ni yola ya. No fue ponemos que esta con y que esta jola ya. No fue ponemos que esta con y que esta jola ya. Nitra papal notizen tliniya ni yola ya. Nitra papal notizen tliniya ni yola ya. No fue ponemos que esta con y que esta jola ya. No fue ponemos que esta con y que allá, allá, allá. Ikla papal no chisen tini yani yola ya. Ikla papal no chisen tini yani yola ya. No cuerpo ni moque.
It seems that with technology, it doesn't always work well. I hope that the time comes when we can do all this in person. Sometimes we're losing David because of the internet. There must be something happening with the internet, but he'll come back. But as you see, all the instruments that he has been playing are for what we call Mesoamerica, which is from the middle of Mexico all the way down to the many different indigenous groups. Now we are divided in many different countries that didn't exist back then. And all the groups were very different from each other, but we kind of find similar instruments across the different indigenous people.
Sí, ahora ya me escuchas.
Sí, ahora sí nos puedes platicar los instrumentos que tocaste, de qué tipo son.
Sí.
So you can, yes, David, what types of instruments you were playing with us, and thank you, that was so nice. And what language you were speaking, ¿qué lengua hablabas? Te estoy perdiendo. I know the language that David was using was Nahuatl from the central part of Mexico in his songs. David, estás como congelado. Well, David tries to come back, and if you notice in the different instruments that you see the snakes, remember the snake and the eagle leading the snake on top of the nopal? Well, that is present also in the different Pyrenees. If you have been to places like Tenochtitlan, where you see the god Quetzalcoatl that unites the earth and the heavens, the eagle and the snake. So you see the head of a snake with many feathers around of the eagle. And this god was very important because he represents nature, bringing everything together, the universe together. And in that sense, when the Spanish came with the Catholic religion, it was easier to understand it for the indigenous people present in that moment because they already believed in a God that put together the earth and the heavens. And that became then our same God. Today, Mexico has many other groups. In fact, people think we're a very, very Catholic country, and we are, but we also have groups of Jewish people, of Muslim, and we all live happily together because we believe in understanding each other and integrating and having respect for each other. No matter where your family comes from, we're all immigrants in this continent. In Mexico, you're born in Mexico, you're Mexican, and the same in every country in the American continent, where all of us, I know our brothers and sisters in Latin America, work hard at keeping their traditions, because traditions are what keep a family together. And the value of family is important all across the world for everybody. And I hope we can get David back so he can tell us a little bit more of how then the instruments, musical instruments, were influenced by the Spanish conquistadores. And if you saw the different instruments, how they made them, because most of the instruments were made by whatever natural resources they had, like wood and plants. That's what they use for their instruments. It's just amazing to see one of those flutes or the drums, made with skin. It's very, very interesting. And it sounds beautiful. I mean, I could hear owls, I could hear birds. And that's what David was trying to convey, that high respect for nature and integrating music with the arts, with nature, with education, which always makes a society I would say, better to integrate all the different talents that we have, because each one of us has a talent. And the more we give our talent and our best to the community, the best for everybody in the community. Oh, I don't see David back yet, but I had asked him, for instance, about the influence of the Spanish in music. And he made a comment to me that that's what Spanish brought, were instruments with strings. So the guitar that we use now very much, like in flamenco music from Spain, you can hear the guitar. And what did we give them? The drums. Drums actually come from Africa, and those were the ones that influenced the Arabs, that then went into Spain with the drums that the flamenco uses. Those are drums that we use in each one of our countries. And in each one of the Latin countries, we had people brought from Africa as well. So we already have a fusion of Africa with indigenous, with Spanish, and then many other Europeans that came after World War II. And we have tried to integrate every group into our traditions. At least in Mexico, in the northern part, we even have Germans and Polish, and part of our traditional Mexican dances have polka in them, because again, we make an effort of integrating and keeping every culture that comes into Mexico to be part of our tradition. And so now instruments are part of our orchestras. David, you're back. We got you back.
I don't know what happened.
So David, is there any place that we can find this instrument in Mexico? I lost you again. David, ¿estás ahí? Are you there? I was asking David if we can still find these groups in Mexico. The answer is yes. There is a push to preserve traditions and instruments, and at least in Mexico City, in the central part, in the center, in the Zócalo, you will see different groups wearing outfits and playing the music, even wearing feathers, to honor our ancestors and keep those instruments and traditions. David? And in fact, in November, when we celebrated Day of the Dead, well, we really are celebrating our traditions, our ancestors. Where do we come from? How do we keep it? How do we make our ancestors proud? Because we carry in our DNA the ancestry of so many generations. And the best we can do is share whatever they left for us in our DNA, in our heart, in our mind. And that's what many groups are trying to do in Mexico, portraying and showing the different traditions that pre-Hispanic used to have. But they do it for exhibitions, because Mexico, like the United States, it's a land of many immigrants, and we are already very mixed. So this is just a specific purpose to be able to showcase, because we don't have Aztecs anymore, only those who now can trace their lineage, but it's not a one lineage. It's mixed with Spanish, with Black, with many other groups that came. But because Aztecs were killed mainly by Spanish, what happens is that they understood, the Spanish understood, that if they got all the indigenous groups together to destroy the Aztecs, which were like the Romans, they were the invaders, the conquistadores, the warriors. So Spanish knew that if they were able to kill them, the rest of the groups would not be protected, and they were right. So once the Aztecs were gone, the warriors were gone, it was very easy to invade every other group, even the Mayas. Although the Mayas left, so they wouldn't be conquered. In general, indigenous people did not accept to be slaves and never became slaves. So when Spanish people brought people from Africa then to make them slaves, indigenous were like, don't do it. And Black people did not become slaves either. And slowly by slowly, then we didn't have slavery. We had abuse, yes, we had many things destroyed, but then it was easy for the country to integrate. David, you're back. And today we're proud of for all the heritage that bring all of us here today. And David, we were so happy looking at all your instruments. Qué contentos de ver todos los instrumentos que nos mostraste. ¿Sí puedes platicar de ellos?
Sí, aquí tengo estoy por el teléfono ahora porque la computadora está loca. Bueno, aquí tengo una de 2 timbales que son una a escala de los timbales mayas. Estos son mayas.
Those are timbales
Eran
made at
grandes.
scale because the real ones are much bigger.
Sí, ese es un timbal maya. Aquí tengo otro. Y este timbal se le
That's
ponía
another thing.
agua por este
You put
lado
water in that hole, and so the sound is
para
even like water.
un efecto especial, sí. Vibraba
That's
el
with the
agua también.
water. Qué
Muy
interesante.
bien.
Very interesting.
Y luego quiero presentar esta ocarina.
An ocarina now
Tiene un sonido muy dulce, muy profundo.
has a very sweet and deep sound.
Con mi
Suena
grupo
como un animal casi, ¿verdad?
¿Perdón?
Suena como un animal también.
Bueno, se le puede dar un efecto de trino. Escúchenlo.
You can even almost make it sound like birds in nature, to be part of nature in your music.
Y sobre estos instrumentos de barro, tenían una gran progresión los mexicas y los mayas.
Mexicas and Mayas made many of their instruments of wood and of clay, and they were advanced in music in both of them.
Sobre
Ese cómo se llama?
había 4 flautas al mismo tiempo.
They could play, this is like playing 4 flutes at the same time. What is the name of that one? ¿Cómo se llama?
El nombre es, en náhuatl, es tlapitzali.
En náhuatl es tlapitzali. And,
Que
decir,
significa soplar, aire. Ajá.
And it means to blow air.
Exacto.
And remember, with this music, they will say poems also. Which maybe, David, ¿nos puedes decir un poema también? Mientras tocas la música, ¿podrías decir unas palabras en náhuatl, de así bonitas de un poema?
Sí.
Which you can say some words in náhuatl, like poems that they always said along with music.
Voy a decir un saludo en náhuatl.
This is a greeting in náhuatl.
Sepa paquilistica tlajpalole iguanica no chinoyolo. ¿Qué significa?
And it means?
Un saludo con alegría y con todo mi corazón para usted.
It means a salute with happiness and with all of my heart to you. Thank you. For you too.
Este instrumento es de capullos de mariposa, coconuts butterflies.
Oh, from the butterflies, yeah. It almost sounds like a jingle bell, right? Casi suena como cascabeles.
It's different to the metal bells. No? And in my neck, please. My beautiful boy is my helper. Okay.
Yes. So he's trying to make beats, also make music dances.
The name for this, el nombre de estos es Coyoli.
Coyoli is the name.
Alegría.
Which means happy.
Alegría.
Y hechos de la mariposa, del capullo. And also
Sí.
from the butterfly, little coconuts, little bags that form butterflies.
Yes. Y esto es una nuez muy fuerte, el coyol. Y lo usan los danzantes para marcar el ritmo.
To mark rhythm.
Bueno, el tiempo estamos ya para terminar. No sé si hay una pregunta que quiera el público, ya que he hecho una pregunta.
We want to see if anybody has a question. We sadly have come to the end of this program, but we hope to have more in the future. This was very interesting, especially to talk about other influences in music by other groups or by Spanish. But if you have any questions, I'm going to check the chat to see if we have any questions. No, it says thank you. So I see some questions that ask if there is more influence that you have seen in the different instruments, en los diferentes instrumentos que nos mostraste. ¿Qué influencia tuvieron los españoles? Por ejemplo, lo de cuerdas que me decías. What influence did you see on these instruments that Spanish come? Did these instruments disappear, or did they transform, or did they add string instruments?
Muy buena pregunta. Los instrumentos que presenté no tienen cuerdas.
So the instruments that David presented, as I said, do not have strings. Son de
aire.
They're wind instruments.
De percusión.
Percussion.
De frotamiento, de raspar.
One's against the other, which I don't know what would be the translation, but as you see, many things where you rub something against each other.
Correcto, ajá, sí. Y la voz cantando, ¿verdad?
And your voice. But when Spanish came, did they mix in the instruments or they just added? ¿Los destruyeron o añadieron los españoles?
Prohibieron, fueron prohibidos por la
When
religión.
Spanish came, religion in the beginning forbade all these instruments. Indigenous people hide them so they wouldn't be destroyed.
Pero los indígenas adoptaron las cuerdas, el violín.
And the indigenous people learn string instruments such as the violin, guitar,
la guitarra, el arpa,
the harp.
Y lo mezclaron con estos
and
instrumentos.
They mixed it. Indigenous people mixed those new instruments with their own in hiding. Today, we look at it as normal, but it had to go through so much to have this today.
Exacto.
¿Y la flauta? ¿Y la flauta?
Esta flauta tiene la afinación de Europa.
This, yeah.
¿Sí? Esta es la única que tiene, pero hay otras flautas que no tienen esta afinación.
So this will be the sound of the flute, which is the European influence, vis-a-vis the one that we heard before, which was the original indigenous, and the sounds were very different. The other ones were like more nature-like. This is the difference, and beautiful too, but it's very different and beautiful.
Así es diferente, sí. Y voy a pasar la cámara para que vean los instrumentos.
And today, we use these instruments. They're not forbidden anymore. And now we use this, a combination plus string instruments. Y podemos ver aquí los instrumentos. So we see the instruments. Este que estás haciendo, que tiene como semillas dentro. You see some of them have like seeds inside and make a sound when you shake them, and they have seeds inside.
Y estas, las sonajas.
Sonaje.
Y aquí están los cascabeles que traigo en los tobillos. Aquí están como...
The ones that you would translate as bell for the clovillo. The drums.
Este instrumento se llama teponazli.
Teponazli. ¿Y este se frota?
Sí, y este lo hacemos para los niños.
Oh, this one, David is a teacher and he teaches all these classes to teenagers, adults, and children. And he makes these instruments with children, for children to use. Can you show us? ¿Me enseñas cómo se usa?
Los hacemos con material de reciclaje, Beatriz.
And they're made with recyclable material. So we're helping nature.
Sí, este es material de reciclaje.
¿Tienes unos que tienen semillas dentro? Que tú los movías así, se oían las semillas. Con una... Porque nos queda poco. I asked him to show us the one like a snake that had like side. And he was turning it upside down.
Que es...
This one. That looks like a snake. ¿Y tiene semillas dentro? ¿De qué está hecho? What is it?
De madera. Este es un instrumento contemporáneo.
So this one is made of wood, and as David turned it around, veo un caracol atrás.
Este es el maya.
So this one, the wood one, el de madera es maya. Y el caracol, David.
No, este caracol es de maya, es con puro calcio, es natural, ya casi no hay de este tamaño.
Yes, I've seen the big shell, and that's used as an instrument too, like a horn. And all of this, as you see, all of these different instruments are made from materials from nature or recycled.
Different size, different tone.
Different sizes, different sounds. David, ¿a dónde te pueden buscar si quieren buscarte más? ¿Tienes un email al que te puedan buscar?
Sí, y también en el
Is there an email that they
Facebook también me pueden buscar.
Por Facebook como David Peñaflor.
El email. No, estoy como Rey David Peñaflor Valdés, que es mi nombre completo.
En Facebook.
Rey David. En Facebook, sí.
Oh, you can find David as Rey, which means king, R-E-Y, Rey David Peñaflor. ¿Cuál es el segundo? Valdés. If you don't remember his name, you can also ask David Mattison, who invited us from the Orlando Museum of Art, to know more about all these wonderful instruments that David has collected. This is a treasure, like a museum that he has put together for all of us, because these instruments come from so many different places, and he has a collection of them, and he explains them, he makes them, he sings, he plays them, he teaches. Thank you so much, David. So if you want to contact David Peñaflor, again, through Facebook or through David Mattison, and I hope, David, that you can invite us to more presentations to learn more about all these wonderful instruments. David was also present in the presentation we had in Orlando Museum of Art for the Day of the Dead with a beautiful altar de muertos. Very, very nice. And thank you again, David, because that was amazing, everything you do with your hands and that you presented to understand all the traditions. So very nice of the Orlando Museum of Art to have this, to share the different traditions of the different groups that we have in Central Florida. To me, it's really a treasure to have all these groups, like the world here, and to meet each other and learn from each other and come together, you know, as a community, because we're all part of this community.
Muchas gracias al Museo de Arte de Orlando. Muchas gracias a David Matson. Muchas gracias. ¿Y a ti? Muchas gracias.
David saying thank you to the Orlando Museum of Art. Thank you to David Madison. Thank you to me. It's a pleasure, David, always. I think, like I said, it's better for us to understand each other and to integrate better by being all friends and learning from each other. That's what we love, learning about the United States, and we love sharing Mexico with all of you, and are very thankful to be in this amazing and wonderful country of the United States. Thank you. Creo que estamos agradecidos de estar en este país, de compartir nuestras tradiciones con ellos y de ellos con nosotros.
Así es.
Thank you again, David Mattison. It has been a pleasure to share with all of your audience. And just please contact us anytime that you would like other presentations or to learn more about any aspect of the culture, music, anything from Mexico. It's a pleasure for us to share with you. We are very happy to do so. Sí, es un placer compartir nuestro México con todos, ¿verdad, David?
Así es, así es. Muchas gracias al Museo de Orlando y a ti y a David.
Gracias a ti por tener esta colección maravillosa que esperemos que hagamos en persona la próxima vez. We hope we can do this in person next time, because I think technology is sometimes a little hard to do all of this, but we thank you again for doing all of this for us. Thank you. Gracias, David.
Gracias.
And thank you back to you, David Mattison. Thank you again for having the Orlando Museum of Art do all this wonderful presentation, for having the Mexican photography exhibition. It's a beautiful collection of amazing Mexican photographers. And please don't miss it. There are 2 weeks left. And don't miss the next Fusion Fest, where you get to see many different countries showing their traditions and culture in Central Florida for all of us who live in Central Florida. It is so interesting. I met so many wonderful people from so many countries. It's really a pleasure and a treasure to have this in our house here in the United States. So David Madison, I don't know if you're there, David?
Thank you so much, Beatriz. Thank you, David. This was beautiful. I'm gonna end the webinar now, but just wanted to say thank you and have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, same to you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.